we never just I guess we do, like, assume we're going to do another one. You know what I mean? After this many years, you're like, when we finish a record and it does its thing, and then me and Matt kind of look at each other and we're like, well, what do you think? Do you want to do another one? And we're always like, yeah, sure, let's do another one. Why not? So yeah, we just try to keep pushing it, pushing ourselves.
What's up, everybody? It's Keefy of GhostCultMag.com, and I am once again joined by Human Furnace of Ringworm. How you doing, bro?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm really well. Congratulations on the new album, Seen Through Fire. It's out now everywhere. Super stoked for you. First things first. I want. We've chatted before, but I'm always curious. Like especially with the hardcore roots of the band, whatever you want to call it, metallic hardcore. Started as a DIY band before you were like signed. 30 years plus into a career, like, the industry keeps changing and you keep plowing through, touring, making new albums. Like, how do you stay motivated in a constantly shifting place?
Well, I mean, I guess you could say musically, I mean, that's all Matt. Matt, like the music all starts with him. So we're all like, I guess you could say we're forever 16 years old. You know what I mean? We're mentally stuck there. So, and we all do different bands. We all do different styles of bands. I'm in another band that's a little more rock and roll, like Motorhead. Matt's in a couple other bands that do other things. So we can get all the other stuff that we want to do. We can get that out there and do that. Whereas for Ringworm, we can kind of keep that kind of pure to what we want to do with it. So it doesn't change too much. And we never felt the need to change it. I mean, we're still making the music that we like, that we want to hear ourselves. And I guess other stuff changes around us, but we don't really give a fuck. So, and quite honestly, it's like for me, it's also a type of self-therapy. I get to scream my balls off, at people all the time. You know what I mean? So it's like I've come to depend on that outlet in my life. So we're all kind of lifers. So, and we still have fun. We still like each other, after all these years, and we could tolerate each other when we go on the road. We have fun. The thing is, we never made it our living. We stay as busy as we can, which is quite busy for a band that doesn't do it for a living. But we've never felt any pressure to maybe change your style to fit the times, which a lot of bands kind of do. We've done for fun, and so it kind of keeps it pure in a way. And we're always of the opinion, if it's not broken, why bother fixing it? Yeah.
Ringworm are not trend jumpers, everybody, if you didn't
No, I
know.
mean, we just do what we like to do, and everybody else has their opinions and their theories, and their how they describe us, but we just make music that we like. That's all.
Killer. I agree. And I think, what's interesting to me about Seeing Through Fire is, what you hit put it on, it sounds like Ringworm, but I like that just like all your other albums, it's a part. It's not a rehash. It's never the same song twice. Maybe, tempos and riffs come and go, but like it's always like an evolving, the
Yeah, I
music
mean,
changes, the songs are, fresh. It sounds I love
sure.
this record sounds as good
Thank you.
as any of the recent stuff for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, to the untrained ear, to anyone listening to this extreme style music, you could say, yeah, it all sounds the same. You know what I mean? If someone from outside the scene would listen to it, they'd be like, yeah, okay. But people that listen to this style of music can hear the subtle changes and things that we do that are different from record to record. We're not gonna, come out with a record of ballads or clean singing, that type of shit. I mean, we're not going to do that because we don't do that. So but yeah, I mean, we try to make every record special, and it is because every record to us is a big deal. It's like, because we never, honestly, we never we never I guess you could say, we never just I guess we do, like, assume we're going to do another one. You know what I mean? After this many years, you're like, when we finish a record and it does its thing, and then me and Matt kind of look at each other and we're like, well, what do you think? Do you want to do another one? And we're always like, yeah, sure, let's do another one. Why not? So yeah, we just try to keep pushing ourselves. So
Right on. You talked a minute ago about purity, right? And maybe that's what keeps the process of it pure. It's like this is the moment for this album, and I think personally, like some of these are some of your best lyrics, my favorite lyrics from Ringworm. Some of them are on this record actually, Carved in Stone, Death Hoax, Thought Crimes. I have notes. House of Flies. Like these are some really good use of lyrics and in terms of storytelling, which is you can just be have a song that's just brutal for the sake of brutal, but it's good when it comes with a little more attached.
Right. Every record, lyric wise, I guess lyrically, I'm always addressing the same things, so to speak. You know what I mean? But as you get older, your perspective changes on some things, because obviously when we started this band, I was 17, 18. Now I'm 51. So I see the world differently a little bit, but for the most part, I'm singing about the same things that everybody sings about. You sing about love, you sing about hate, loss, depression. You sing about the way you see the world around you. So that's kind of what I brought into this one, and lyrically, that's kind of where I'm at these days. Because I don't sing about things that I don't know about, and I don't sing about things that I don't try to preach to anybody. It's never been my thing. So yeah, I mean, this is another record of just how I'm feeling about things at the time that I wrote them.
I dig it. I dig it. And then in terms of touring, right? You guys tour very, frequently, as heavily lately, especially with the record coming and now out. And what I see over the years is you get to tour with your peers, and then you have up and coming bands. Like, how do you feel about the current wave of, either hardcore or metal bands? Have anybody impressed you particularly? You've
Um,
been
you
around
know,
the block a while.
yeah, I mean, I wish we toured more. We try to do it as often as possible when it works. And the past few years we've been doing quite a bit. Obviously, all the pandemic crap shut everything down for a long time, so that was not easy for any band to work around, especially older bands, because the older you get, the harder it becomes to do this. So 2 years of inactivity. I mean, obviously, we were making a record during that point. We were staying busy, but touring wise, it's hard to stick with it. But yeah, I mean, I like what I see out there. I mean, there's always there's bands that are doing something different, and then there's bands that kind of they're doing things that are just as good, but they're kind of really heavily relying on, I guess you could say, I don't know how to word it, but there's bands that are just kind of going with the flow and doing what's current, and they're doing it very well. And then there's bands that kind of go outside the box, and that's always been like that too. And every couple of years, bands come around that kind of change the genre a little bit. And so as far as specific bands, I don't really want to name any, but yeah, in general, I mean, the scene's stronger than it really ever was. I mean, there's so many. It's a lot easier to do a band these days, and it's a lot easier to get your music out there. So you're seeing an avalanche of music out there that's it's everywhere. So I mean, the scene's strong, as far as extreme music goes, and it took a minute for like the audience to come back to the scene, to live shows and stuff like that. But I think it's getting back to where it was.
Definitely. It's still a little perilous, I feel like, in terms of how expensive touring is. It always was, but it's very expensive
Oh
now.
yeah.
And Danzig canceled a couple of tour dates because there was no bus for him. Like, that blows my mind that maybe he doesn't even own it. He can't even own a bus, but maybe those
You
things are a
know,
fortune. Diesel's a fortune. A driver
sure.
is a
I mean,
fortune.
for an outsider, it may be easy to think that bands are either just trying to be cheap or they're being greedy, but that's not really the case. I mean, at most times, because it's expensive to tour even on lower level, because we still cruise around in a beat up van, after 30 years, you know what I mean? But when you get to certain levels, everything costs more. Everything costs a lot of money, and bottom line is you have to come home and pay your bills. So no matter who you are, so it's tough. I mean, even for large scale bands and small bands, it's really tough to do. So yeah,
No
you're
doubt.
you're right. it's a hard thing to do. And then you got, the one way to make that up is to raise ticket prices, and people don't like that. And it's an evolving thing, and it gets difficult. So we'll see where it all lands. From what I do hear is that a lot of larger venues are now getting rid of the percentage, the merch cut that some clubs take. So I think that's a big thing for bands. That's happening now. I think the constant pressure from bands and everyone talking about how that was not cool. I think a lot of venues kind of listened and said, okay, fine, keep all your merch. And that's kind of what keeps most bands afloat, even large bands,
I
the
hope
merch
so,
sales are
man.
what does it.
From your mouth to Satan's ears,
Yeah.
because for real, merch cuts are evil and don't really need to exist and never did need to exist. There's no justification for it to me.
Well, and it's also one of those things like when you go to these large, really large shows and you see like $50 t-shirts and stuff like that. And that's not really so much, the band is like those merch cuts. I mean, it costs them the same, probably even less to make a t-shirt because you're printing thousands, but you're still need to make X amount of money. So the only way to do it is to sell these things for $50. I don't know if that'll ever go down. It's like once you get to that point, you're not going to be like, oh well, they're not taking merch cut. We're going to drop them back to 35. People are so used to that, they're not going to drop them back down. But it's economics, and but it's a good thing that these venues are coming around to that, because it's really, with everything being so much more expensive, travel, buses, hotels, food, the whole, fuel, everything. The last thing I need is a venue taking 20, 15, 10, 15, 20% of your merch, because that's how you make a living.
Right on. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for sharing all that. And
Yeah.
I hope it does end or at least die down because, especially to younger bands, but every band, it's just unfair in general. But yeah,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
feel you.
it's yeah, I think it's seen its day. I think you'll see a lot of other venues kind of following suit with some of the other venues and stop taking merch cuts. Most of the smaller venues don't do that, but when you get into the larger ones, yeah, they always do. But hopefully that'll be a thing of the past.
Exactly. Live Nation, we're looking at you. Stop this shit. In the interest of time, let's do a little track by track on Seeing Through Fire. Whatever you feel like sharing, I'm sure our audience would appreciate, as would I. I'll run down the track names and you can just riff if you like, whatever you want to discuss. So, obviously, the title track kicks off the album, and that's
Yeah.
first.
The title track. What is that? That is
Seeing Through Fire.
Seeing Through Fire. Basically, if you kind of look at the world as it's always been this way, but even more so when you kind of focus on it, everything's on fire. The world is on fire, really, whether that's literal or in your own personal life. It's the old saying, if you're going through hell, just keep going. And that's kind of what the overall arc of the album is like, everything is fucked, everything's fucking crazy, and you've got to find a way to see through all this stuff or just keep going through it. You know what I mean? You got to see through all this bullshit if you want to try to make it out in generally one piece. So that's in a nutshell kind of what that song is representing.
Alrighty. Carved in Stone is the next track.
Carved in Stone. That one's kind of a kind of a little nod to like kind of how you're living your life now. Will it'll kind of predict what you're going to leave behind when you're gone. What are you leaving behind? Like what kind of memories, what kind of creativity, what have you created, what have you done, what kind of lasting mark have you left on your friends or your family, or everybody in general. Some people don't really care about that, which is fine, but I write songs from me, so it's kind of a little tip to kind of look at the way you're living your life now, because that's what you're gonna leave behind. In the end, we're all gonna end up just a name on a tombstone. So what do you want that to mean to other people?
Right on.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite title on the record is the next track, No Solace, No Quarter, No Mercy.
Yeah, that one kind of just kind of encapsulates the way kind of humans from the get-go have, always been in constant struggle with each other, constant war, constant battle. It's just something that's ingrained in humans' DNA, is that there's always going to be aggressive streaks, there's going to be fighting, there's going to be, I'd call me a pessimist, but I don't ever see a day. I mean, not that I'll be alive for any of this shit, but I can't see a day where everything is peaceful, just because that's not how humans are wired. We're animals, and that's always going to be the case. As much as we try, there's always going to be aggression. There's always going to be violence, and there's probably always going to be war. So that's kind of what that one talks about. It's a never ending struggle, between at least knowing that exists. It doesn't make it easier to get through life, but it just sometimes just knowing that that's the case helps.
Word. I agree.
Yeah.
Death Hoax is next.
Death hoax. Well, let's see that one. That one's kind of that one's kind of a song about tuning out. Like, the overall arching theme of this album is just kind of how shitty this world can be, and it's a struggle between just wanting to, on a personal level, just tune out, just say fuck it to everything and just disconnect yourself from just about everything. This all the social media bullshit, even bands, or to just do, you know what I mean? Just completely cut yourself off from everything, because sometimes that seems the easiest route to go. But that being said, there is a need for social interaction, and you want to, you still sometimes want to be around people, or at least connect somehow. And that's a song about kind of struggling between those two things, just like living in a world that you often find really disgusting, but at the same time you like it, or you need it.
Noted. Thought Crimes, probably one of my more favorite tracks, is next.
Yeah, Thought Crimes is basically, it's about visual and the type of manipulation that every one of us, I mean, are victims to, or I've always been obsessed ever since I was young with advertising, and ever since I was really young, the way commercials are formatted, the colors they use, the keywords they use, the music that they use, how it's all manipulation somehow to get you to do something, or to believe something, or to feel something in general. And over the and since people figured out that you could really manipulate people through this, it's just spread everywhere. So everything you see mostly is some type of agenda, or some type of idea that someone's trying to get across to you. And obviously that could be used for nefarious purposes. That could be used for just about anything, but we're all kind of being manipulated in a way. So it's really hard to see, especially these days, what's real, what's true, what's not. And then try to find, take all this crap that you're seeing and filter it through any type of reason or rational thinking that you may have in your brain, to try to come out on the other side with something that you feel is probably the truth, or probably the correct way to feel about something. And that's very hard to do, because you're getting bombarded, manipulation and all types of stuff. So it's that's what that song's about.
Right on. No lies detected there. I was going to say, I was telling some friends I went to see the first show on the Metallica tour, and the entire football stadium is like an ad for Pepsi. The building is an ad
Yeah,
for
I mean,
Pepsi. It's crazy.
that's on a grand scale, and there's things that are just on stuff that happens on a day-to-day basis, everywhere you go, on even on small scales, even stuff that you don't notice. You know what I mean? Like I said, I've always been obsessed with psychological advertising, and just the way things go about, like stuff that you'll never notice, but I find it fascinating on one hand, but also very, very, it's like, oh, it's a very disgusting type of, I guess, business, you could say. But yeah, it's everywhere, and there's no way of getting around it. It just is what it is.
Right on. Unavoidable Truth is next.
Unavoidable truth. It's that song is, I kind of passionate, because I see a lot of, I meet a lot of people, and that, especially younger ones. I'm not going to call out a whole generation, because that's not really a fair thing to do. But what I do see a lot of is a lot of people that are almost, it seems like they're afraid of just living like regular life. Like, there's hardships that everyone has to go through, no matter who you are, how rich you are, what class you come from, anything. So there's stuff that you have to go through. And I see a lot of younger people that are just kind of scared of that. They're scared of, having to work, scared of having, someone disagree with them, scared of social interaction, scared of like everything. So it's like people try to live in a bubble sometimes, And I often wonder, like, what's gonna how long can you live in that bubble before you can't? And then you're going to be faced with like all of life's hardships that you're not going to be mentally prepared to deal with. And I see that a lot. And I often wonder, like, wow, I'm like, if you're say 25 or 26 and you're afraid of all this shit, what's going to happen when you're 45 years old and you can't live at home anymore, or you can't, you can't live off a credit card anymore, or you have to do something to, you have to work to actually survive. Like, I'm curious to see how that's going to go, at a certain point. But that song's kind of about that. It's like facing life's, there's no safe spaces in life, so it's like, it's about facing all that bullshit that you're going to have to at some point or other.
Reminds me a lot of advice my dad gave me as a kid. He was like, "You guys are all." This is like 35 years ago. He's like, "You guys are all fucked. It's over." He's like, "You don't, you can't, you wouldn't be able to make it through like what we did." He was not wrong. Uh, Still
Yeah,
teaching me
I'm
years
not
later.
I'm not an old fuddy duddy or anybody. I mean, I am old, so I do have some kind of, I guess, traditional viewpoints on hard work and work ethics and just, having to earn stuff and struggle for this and that. I mean, but I don't see an overabundance of that in the younger culture. Let's just say that.
Agreed. House of Flies is next.
House of Flies. That one is basically about, I guess, keeping lies to yourself, or keeping things that you don't want to deal with, or keeping stuff locked up inside for whatever reason you may have, and it just, having things bubble over eventually. You know what I mean? Like, I'd like to think that everybody keeps stuff inside that they don't want to either deal with or talk about, or lie, all types of stuff that just eats away at them from the inside out, and eventually they make their way to the surface in one way or another, whether it's how your personality is, or all sorts of stuff. So that song's about just keeping things locked inside for a long time, and the feeling of how it kind of could consume you, and kind of rot you away from the inside out.
All right. You Want It To is the next one.
Well, that one is a pseudo sexual song, I guess. In a way, it's all about people that, and I don't want to get misquoted on this, but people that, for whatever their situation is, they claim victimhood, but they're nowhere near a victim, because it's almost, you're being a willing victim to something, and and everything that builds around that. Like, it's you almost want the thrill of being a victim, but you also like the rush of whatever is happening to you. You know what I mean? So, whether for whatever reason, maybe you don't want to accept that you are a willing victim. You know what I mean? So it's about that, being a willing victim to something.
Mm, right on. Mental Decontrol is next. What a great title. Should be a band name, like a punk band.
Right? Probably is. I don't know. I don't really think too much about song titles. So, but yeah, that one's just, that's another really personal one. I guess it's just about, you know, uh, trying to it's a struggle for everybody, no matter how old you are, but just trying to keep a hold of keep your shit together. You know what I mean? Keep your faculties together, and, trying to cope with, mental struggles, mental health, I guess how you want to call it. Granted, being my age, mental health was sometimes just another name for life. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people, like, my mental health. It's like, well, what's wrong? Like, well, I have to go to work and I have to do this. Like, that's just called life. You know what I mean? So some people have trouble. You know what I mean? And a lot of the struggles that some people are having, that I hear that some people are having, are just, to me, just seems like normal shit that you have to deal with. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem like, sure, it gives you stress and it gives you anxiety, but this is just normal stuff. Mental decontrol is about trying to cope with that. And sometimes being mentally unstable at times is the only way to deal with your problems, so to speak, without, it's hard to explain, but it's a song about decaying mental health. And sometimes, you could use that as a shield, I guess, against life's problems at times. So it's about that. mental health, just
It
like the
feel it
song.
feels like these last two are very related because it's the same thing. There's a lot of injustice in the world, and if you're in a continuous state of victimhood, you're not helping solve that injustice. And it's the same thing. There's a lot of people with grave, dire mental health issues that we don't talk enough about and respect enough. But then if everybody is on the spectrum and suffers some, like we can't all be this sick. Maybe we are all this sick. I don't know, but it feels
Right.
like we can't. Are we all this sick? Maybe we had it wrong all these years, or I don't know. Like it's
Yeah,
there's
like I said,
degrees of illness,
it
right? Degrees.
a lot of these, a lot of these songs all kind of intertwine at some point. You know what I mean? Like all these concepts for these songs all kind of intertwine into one theme of, like how like the song title, all kind of just they intertwine. Each song's focuses on different parts, but in general, every song's about how fucking crazy everything is.
Fair
But
enough.
yeah, yeah.
As we get down the stretch here, Power and Blood is the next to last track on the album.
Yeah, that one's fairly cut and dried. I mean, that's kind of addresses, how there's people in this world that will make sure that there is endless war. It's profitable, obviously, and they don't care about really who wins or who loses, as long as there's constant war, and it's always going to be that, and for reasons that for power or for wealth or riches or control, usually, so that kind of addresses that, because I can't see that ever going away, unless the whole planet goes away. We have a big asteroid that comes and takes us out. That would be the fairest thing. But yeah, that's what that song's about.
I'm personally rooting for the aliens to take us out, but that's
Well, that would be
me.
wild. That would be
Like
pretty wild. I think.
one big laser blast and gone. Everybody. That's what we deserve.
I'd like it to last a little bit so I could sell some T-shirts or something like that.
Nice. And then the final track.
Make a few bucks, be for the world.
Yeah, yeah. Why not?
What's that?
I was gonna say, yeah. Why not? Let's make a buck at the end.
Yeah,
That's
I
also
was here
very
for the end, and all I got was this lousy
right.
T-shirt.
That would be the most American thing possible. Also,
Yeah.
Playing God is the final track on the record.
Uh-huh. That song actually was a late addition, a last minute addition to the album. The album was pretty much wrapped up, and Matt kind of came into the studio, was like, "Hey, I got another song I want to put on there." And I said, "Cool," and it kind of winds everything down. Obviously, it varies from the rest of the record sonically. It's a cool down, because the record never stops from second one to the last note of Power and Blood. It is just fucking full throttle, hammer down. And then we thought that, maybe at the end, you might need a little cool down, something to kind of not wreck your car into a building or something, maybe just get a speeding ticket or something, because it's pretty heavy too. Yeah, that one is just, it covers, like, I guess, the different spectrum or a different side of society's moral codes that are very interesting to me. People have, for the most part, humanity across the board has a certain moral code, whereas, you don't kill people, obviously, you know what I mean? You don't murder, you don't steal, things like that. But there's a flip side to that, where people that are very cold, very, very a complete lack of compassion, you know what I mean? And I find that whole spectrum very interesting, you know what I mean? To see the world as just bags of meat walking around, you know what I mean? And it's a very interesting concept. I mean, and sometimes it honestly feels like, wow, that would be great to feel like that, because it takes so much problems out of life. But I don't. But I find it very interesting. We put that song on there.
It's a fitting end to a record
Yeah,
full
I
of
mean,
bangers.
we struggled, not mightily, but we figured that, so that people get what they want out of this record, and if they want, full blown speed and just get your ass beat, then before the last song they can pop the CD out and not listen to that last song. It's there. It's the last song for a reason. So it's like it's not in the middle of the record to slow it down, because it's a short record. So all those songs have to be in order, and this one had to be last. So it could, like, you could use it as a cool down, or you could just not listen to it and go about your day in a fiery rage.
Nice. Well, I certainly prefer a chill track at the end to some instrumental open now.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
has changed over the years, but I feel
yeah,
like
I mean,
yeah,
I often say that we're one trick ponies as far as what we do. And that's I don't mean that in a disparaging way, because we know what we're good at, we know what we like to do, and we know what we have fun doing. So we continue doing that. Now we inside our own little world, we do different things different. We've got 8 other records where we've done different things. But the overarching thing of each record, we keep that the same. But we dabble in some weirdness and in different styles here and there. So that's fine. But this record, we've made it with a specific purpose. I mean, we realize we're not trying to make Dark Side of the Moon. This is a record that is like, it's short because it has to be short. The aggression level is so high that it has to be that short. And we knew that going into it. We're like, this is a fucking balls out record. When we listen to it, we're like, fuck, there's no breaks in this. There's no nothing. There's no slow tracks. There's no fucking anything. It's just fucking hammer time. And we were cool with that. We're like, fuck it, let's just do that. You know what I mean? We have other songs that we could have put in there that varied. So maybe critics could be like, yes, they're very dynamic now, instead of, every song's the same. But we don't really fucking care. We just made a fucking balls ripping album, and we kind of knew we were doing that. So, but with the last track, yeah, we're like, well, let's give them a little bit of a break and put this little slower, more, catch your breath type thing and go have a nice day type track.
There you go. For your social media people, hashtag balls ripping album is your quote there. And from my video editing buddy, my partner here. Just for a final thing, man, what are you looking forward to for the last stretch of the year? The last
Well,
Q4?
we've got a 3-week tour coming up with Venom Inc. and this band Satan, old school band Satan. They're pretty awesome. So we're looking forward to that. And then after that, we're making plans right now to get out to the West Coast. We're from Cleveland, so we want to get out to the West Coast. We haven't been out there for quite a few years because we had a lot of plans with our 2019 album. Just because of my voice, and then the world shut down. And then the next thing you know, we were making an album because at that tour for that, and they didn't happen. So we made a new record. So now we're gonna try to jump right back on there and get out to the West Coast, finally get back to Europe, hopefully Japan. I mean, we're going to really try to get as many places we can for this between now and, next summer or whatever the whole touring cycle for this record, and really give it hell and see if we could survive, see if we come back in one piece from all this shit and probably do it again. Yeah. So we're excited to get out there and fucking play some shows.
Get in the van, crush, rinse, repeat. I dig it. Human Furnace,
yeah, pretty much.
Thanks so much for catching up with Ghost Cult. I appreciate you so much. Congratulations on the new album, and I hope to see you on the road when you get to the West Coast, man.
Yeah, where are you from?
I'm from the East Coast, but I live in San Francisco officially, so I'll see you when you get there.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, plans are in the works, and we'll be there. It'll probably be maybe the beginning of the year or something like that. But we're making everything's now that the record's out, everything's starting to fall into place, and that takes a little time to figure out. We got to plan our lives, and once we do, we'll be out there.
All right. We'll see you there, man.
All right, brother.
Cheers.
Thank you.